again. And welcome to my second presentation about blocks and layouts, different layout solutions. So this is not specifically about the blocks and layout initiative for Drupal 8 only, but rather I will talk about lots of stuff in Drupal 7, so a little bit of history involved. You might still remember my username, find me, and this presentation is online, so there's also all the steps. It will be like 3/4 of the presentation will be a live demo, and I've packaged all the stuff into features so you can also play and see how it works. Before doing this presentation for Drupal Dev Day Saga, I thought it would be interesting to reach out to the people and see what are the approaches that you're currently using for realizing layouts in Drupal. And we can see that from the almost 50 participants, it was actually interesting to see that grow, because in the very beginning, the context module was on top of it. But then as the survey continued, it seems that more of you are using panels as your favorite layout system in Drupal 7. Lots of people are, of course, using blocks, because maybe you only use panels for the content area and you still place some blocks around. Templates for the more front-end developers. And yeah, there's context, display suite, and lots of other stuff that I will cover within this presentation. Then the first question was about which of the modules are you using, and then what is your favorite module. So you can see that panels and context and display suite are probably the most important ones when you want to realize layouts in Drupal. So a little bit of background, how does that all begin? Well, in Drupal we have this system. In order to realize layouts, we depend on themes, regions, blocks, and templates. So when you go to the configuration or to structure blocks, you can see that there's a main content area, and then the theme provides other regions where we can place blocks into. And the Drupal core system, the Drupal core block system, is a little bit limited. It already provides us with some measures of, okay, this block should only show up on the front page, this block should only show up for different content types or for different user roles. But when you have a complex site, you might be having 50 different block configurations, and you also want to place the same block into different regions on different subsections of the site. And this obviously gets us into a lot of trouble. So some of the challenges that we are facing is that the admin structure blocks configuration page is just not really suitable for configuring a lot of blocks for the site. Then we can export the block configuration, which is a bad thing if we want to deploy and if we want to test properly. And then we have the standard blocks themselves. They don't really have any context information about what is available. So what we usually do is just load the current node by doing some argument magic. Like if you see the second argument of the URL is mapped to the current node. This is kind of tightly coupling the URL structure to the block itself. And it would be nicer to have a context system so that the block itself can define what is it that I require, and then on another level we can inject this stuff, and maybe this will be getting more clear on when we see the panel system, of course. Yeah, and then another problem is that the content region is kind of the special region that is always in the center, and we can't really define landing pages without having content, for example. Yeah, so So composition patterns is basically when you build layouts for your site, what you're basically doing is what I call applying different composition patterns. And we have seen them evolve as using custom blocks, creating contextual views. So you have a main content area, and then with the contextual view, you would add some related content, for example. Then entity views attached. These are all like the classic approaches that we have seen in Drupal 6 already. And then other people came up with more complex solutions. So there is the context system, there's the panel system, there's the display suite system, and these are like entire subsystems that allow us to do lots of things, and they can also be combined with each other. So sometimes they are mutually exclusive, but it's good to see that there are so many solutions and there's so much of a variety available. It also brings us to the problem that a Drupal person knows, okay, on this, so I've built this composition of my site, and I know, okay, this part, this is a slider, and it's obviously a view because it lists pieces of items. And this is a block, but this is the main content because I built this site the way that I understand it. But on the other hand, we have to remember that the actual users that are populating the content on the site and then that they are trying to change things, they would just treat everything as content. They don't really want to understand this is a view and this is a block and he's built this way. Yeah. So this is kind of a little bit of background. And I would like, yeah, I will start with the demo right now. So let me just switch the screen. Okay. So I built this tiny website. Obviously, a Drupal demo site has to have some cat content in it. So we have some articles with nice images. We have a basic page that is just static content. Yeah, those articles, they also have some text written, and they are organized into tags, so we can see all the articles that are cool, for example. What else do we have? Yeah, we have another tag that's called cat. So nothing special going on so far. This will be tricky because now I have to type and put the microphone. Okay, so first, what I would like to show you is the command line, because who is using the features on module? So almost everybody here is familiar with features. Is there? So for those who don't know features, it's allowing us to replay all the configuration changes that we make using the interface and export it into code. So what I can do now is see that under sites all modules, I have some modules available that are basically configuration. So there's EL something. Yeah. So I created some feature modules, and I will try to add more functionality using them. So we have started with the base feature, and I will now enable a feature to add the entity views attached module. we have now used entity views attached to change something on the site. And what we are doing is, when we go onto an article, we see the body description, and we can also see that there's related content. So in the background, I've set up like a magic view. And this view, based on a contextual filter, it will understand what is the current node, and list all, and based on some relationship, it will just list all the related articles. So if, for example, this article has the tag cool, we should expect all the related content items to also have the tag cool. The way how entity views attach works is that you create this kind of view, related content, entity views attach. There's the entity content setting, so it accepts an argument, and the argument is, okay, so the entity that the view is attached to. And then on the other hand side, within my article configuration, it will add automatically a field for this view. So every article using entity views attach has another field that allows us to list, for example, related content. And I've now moved the field upwards. And this is already a way that we have seen previously in order to add related content on our sites. Yeah, so this is like a basic step. But now, go a little bit further. Talk about context, display suite, and panels modules. So what the context module does is it allows us to react on something, similarly to what the rules module does. And then one action that we can take in context is placing blocks. And we are using, or we have been using this extensively for the recruiter distribution, for example. So in different sections of the site, for example, on the job search, we want to place all the filter facets. And then on the other section of the site, we want to place this kind of blocks. And it just makes, it allows us to move the configuration out of the global block configuration and package it into different contexts. Let's see how that works. So if I enable the context feature, it will enable for me the context UI as well. And within the context UI, I have set up, for example, a context that specifically targets the front page. And on the front page, I first specify the condition, okay, the path is equal to front. And then as one reaction, I can place different blocks, and that's what I'm using. So what I'm placing now on the front page is two static views. So when I scroll down on the front page, now I've created this magic footer, and it will only show up on the front page. So when we go to another page, it's not there in the footer anymore. Is that too fast? What else do we have? Articles. Articles themselves should also have something in the sidebar, and again, it's the related content view, but in a different styling. So, yeah. I don't know why that's closed. I don't know where there's no layout, but we will definitely see layout later on. So we now have the related content placed using the context system, and this allows us in comparison to the entity views attached, where we would only be able to place it as fields within the content. We can now place things outside of the content as we can do with the standard block system. So actually, I really liked the context system until recently. I figured that other solutions are better. We'll see why. So that was the context system. The display suite module specifically targets only the managed display of entities. So we can style nodes, users, any entity in the system using custom layouts. We can also define additional view modes. It's really like this Swiss Army knife that allows us to do many things on the managed display side of things, because we can also define our own code fields, dynamic fields, block fields, preprocess fields. So it's really a powerful tool that we can use to enrich how the content itself is being represented on the page. So back to the demo. I enable the display suite feature. And now on the structure, there's another point that's called display suite. So it gives me an overview of all the entities or the bundles of the entities that I can style. And when I go into the article, we can see that now there are two different areas. So we have the left and the right. And this is due to the fact that down here, display suite adds some more functionality. And I can choose which kind of layout I want to apply. So when I apply the two-column layout, I still have the standard fields UI, where I can drag stuff around. But I can drag it into the regions that the layout itself has. And we can see that now, when I look at the article itself, you can see that using display suite without any coding required, we can just reuse the layout. It's not properly styled, of course, but we have a two-column layout and we can place all the fields that we have in there, which is pretty cool. Another thing that display suite allows us is to work on the view modes. So developers might be familiar with the hook to define their own view modes, but display suite also conveniently allows us to create our own view modes. And I think this is especially helpful when working with views, because traditionally in views we would use single fields and just add them and rewrite them in a way. But having view modes makes our pieces of content on the website more reusable. So you create additional view modes, like I did for the article. Now we can see that the article has default, teaser, and mini on the top right side. And so I have another view mode that's not a teaser anymore, but it's like a very minified version of the article. And this very minified version of the article has a specific reason, because now on the overview page, we can see that the teasers, they will always list the content and the offer. Content and offer. But then when we go into the content itself, the related items, these related items, they have the mini view mode, and so they don't display the offer anymore. Yeah, so there's a lot of magic in display suite that I can show, because I have to move on to the next module, but it's definitely worth checking it out. And there's people that only use display suite, or there's people that combine display suite with context module, or even combine it with the panels module. So from my point of view, it's the most successful layout solution for Drupal 7. And as I have the data of the survey, I can now say it's official. Well, so the panels thing is not just only, it's not a single module, but it's actually an ecosystem. So it includes useful tools that don't require layouts at all, as the page manager. And then there's panels context, which unfortunately is also called context and makes our head spin a little bit. But it's basically this part of the system where when I was initially saying that blocks cannot define what they require, with CTools context or panels context, blocks can now define the data that they need in order to get rendered properly. And then we have lots of stuff more on top of it, Panelizer, the in-place editing functionality. We can define our own CTools content plugins instead of writing dumb blocks, and much, much more. So when we compare layout solutions, I think there's two different approaches. We can either push things or we can pull things. And this means that we have seen, I defined with the context module, I defined when something happens, there should be an additional block in the footer region. Or when this happens, there should be a block somewhere else. So this is what I mean by push, because the blocks themselves, they will get pushed into the layout. While on the other hand, with panels, we define the whole canvas. We define a whole, replace all the content, and then panels will control whatever should show up inside. And Display Suite also basically does that, but just on the content level itself. So panels is a lot, as I've said. We can create page variants. We have selection rules, layout selection, content placement, page manager, panelizer, in-place editor, and I think we should just see how that works. So even if you don't like the panels module, you should definitely check out Page Manager. And let me show you what it allows us to do. So Page Manager, once enabled, allows us to manage different pages under structure. So when we go to pages, we can see that there are some system pages available. And I will now have to do a little bit of magic, because basically we can, so I want to use Page Manager in order to override the logic how the term page behaves. So I will now enable this one. But it's not possible because it has already been overridden by a view that's active. And so we can disable the view, or we can use Page Manager existing pages in order to allow us to do that. And I will just disable the view real quickly. So taxonomy term pages should now be handled by the Page Manager. And when I go into the taxonomy term configuration, we can see the very first important part is we can create different variants of pages. So based on different selection criteria, we can actually deliver different versions of the same URL to the user. So I have the private term pages and I have the default term pages. This means that the private term pages have a selection rule, and this selection rule says, okay, when the user role is anonymous user, something should happen. And then, if that's not the case, then just the default term page will appear. And I've configured the private term page to basically deny access to the to anonymous users. So they will get they will get a redirect. Let's try this out. So when I go onto the web page, I'm still able to see those term pages. But when, as an anonymous user, I try to access it, I will get redirected to the front page. So this is what Page Manager at its very core does. It allows us to manage the URL behavior, and then based on selection criteria, we can do something. What it also does, it has this context system. So we can see that for the term page, we have arguments available to us. So we can see that the term being viewed is available as kind of an object. But we can also add relationships. So, for example, from the term, we can refer to a vocabulary, or we can add static contexts. And this is like all the input variables that we can then pass on as a further information when we use panels. So talking about panels, I have another feature that's called Panelizer. And Panelizer now allows us to do the following. It's the only thing today that's not in structure, but it's under content offering, configuration, content offering, Panelizer. So we can see that every node we are able to panelize now. And I've created a variant, or I've enabled Panelizer for the basic page. So that's accessible in here. And it should also do something when I'm going to the basic page. And what we can see is, okay, there's the title again, there's the body with the label now. And then at the very end, I've just added the search form, for example. And how I do that is, we have this Panelizer tab. And within the Panelizer, we can see that we have basically the panel system, which allows us to drag stuff around within this panel's UI. And we can add anything that's available. So in here, we can access parts of the node itself. So I can add the node offer, for example. And this part is where we talk about context, because panels is provided with the context. When we go back to context, we can see that the current node is available, but we could also add another node. For example, some static article. As an additional context. And then within the content, I can, for example, add another time the node body. But this time, I'm not using the node body of the currently node being viewed, but of this other context that has been provided in some way, and in this case, in a static way. Save that. Well, obviously, panels is also about using layout. So there's a layout builder. I would not recommend, but we can write our own layouts in code. Or we can just reuse pre-configured layout. So I can now switch to a 2-column layout, save that, and drag things around in a very convenient way. So that's really, really powerful and allows us to do a lot of things. And yeah, now we can see that I've moved the search box to the right. There's one body of the currently node in currently viewed, and there's another body of the static node that I've selected previously. So that's pretty cool. There's lots of stuff going on besides that. I would just quickly throw up the Panoply distribution. So on Drupal.org you can download the Panoply distribution. It comes pre-configured with all the panel stuff that I've shown right now. And what it also adds is the in-place editing. So the users with the permission to do so can just click on the button, customize this page. And without going back into the backend, they can move stuff around, save it, have their landing page changed, for example, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So at Drupal, at the company where I work for, we have had experience with all those systems. We have used context before. We have used display suite. We have evaluated panels. And what we came up with is that we are still using display suite for the nodes themselves. And we're using panelizers, so we can also panelize not only the, for example, the teaser itself, but we can also panelize the full page of the nodes. So if we need to add something related, we're using panelizer on the outer level, and we're also using panels everywhere for the entire site. So we are basically entirely relying on the panel system for adding global blocks and stuff, because it just adds more flexibility. Cool. So that's it for Drupal 7, and when we talk about Drupal 8, there's web services and context. What's it called? Web services, context, core initiative, something like that. And the Scotch Initiative, both of them basically were about getting all these panels into core. Yeah, that was a good idea. Unfortunately, it didn't really happen, but some things at least were achieved. So we have now blocks as plugins, so there's a great plugin system in Drupal 8. Interestingly, you're using annotations in order to configure stuff that you have been configuring before using the info files, using info hooks, which makes the blocks much more powerful. We can now use object-oriented code. They are extensible, and there's at least some notion of the context system there, but it's not really as far or as mature as the C2's context system is. So there's still lots of stuff to do. For Drupal 8, what we have from a site builder perspective is a new blocks library. We can create our custom block types. They are fieldable. They support revisions and view modes, which basically, so blocks are basically as powerful as standard content is. And you can place one block multiple times if you want, because in Drupal 7 you could only place one block one time, and now you have basically block instances which allow you to add the same block several times with different configurations. Yeah, and on the theming side of things, we're using Twig instead of TPL PHP. The survey was extended to ask people about what they are most excited about or what they are most wishing for Drupal 8. So they are pretty excited about that the block placements are possible and Twig. Blocks as plugins. Panels, once it's done. We have to wait for it. The layout module, it was in core, but it was removed again. So yeah, sorry, no layouts module there, but it's in Contrib and people can figure out if they can make it work in a proper way. Personally, I think that configuring all the layouts just in the front end is a little bit problematic because there's SAS and there's SUSI grids and there's so cool front-end development techniques that we can use, but we need the command line for. So we should not be generating CSS from Drupal for layouts, for example. That's my personal take. Yeah, some people still want context module in core or being ported to Drupal 8, and I think there's definitely a need for it, especially for sites where you don't want to do the heavy lifting and install all the panels stuff, and just conditionally place blocks somewhere. And there's also breakpoint module in core, maybe you've heard of that. So breakpoint currently is used for responsive images, but it could also be used for switching out layouts depending on the breakpoint. But that again conflicts with my view of we should not generate CSS. So I think that's it basically. I'm happy to take your questions. Yeah, thanks for mentioning this. So the thing with Panelizer is it's not panels only, but it allows us to panelize single instances. So originally Panelizer was built in order to create so that editors can go in and for every node they could define a different layout, and that's what it actually does. So when in Panoply I'm here somewhere, for example, there's a content item, and I start to customize this page. I'm using Panelizer now, right? And then I save it. And we can see that on the customized page, we can revert it back to the content page default. So actually, Panelizer works in a hierarchical way that you can provide default layouts. You can also provide multiple default layouts that the user can choose from, and then in the end, the user, if he has or she has the ability to do so, the user can switch between layouts or can override the layouts themselves. This is also apparent if I go back to the Panelizer configuration. So we can see on the top that we can provide default panels, we can allow for choosing between panels, and then the default panel can be overwritten and reverted. So we can provide standard layouts in a standardized way, which are great, so that the editors won't be able to mess around too much, or we give the editors the ability to panelize actually. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That's an important thing that was missing. So layout was removed again from Drupal 8 core, and so I've been following the discussion a little bit, but I can talk about all the details. As far as I know, layout module was not just mature enough. There were just too many discussions because some people were against it and some people were in favor of it. Yeah, so it was not. The maintainers decided that it's not ready and it should rather prove itself in Contrib than us inventing something in core that's not been tested at all before. Because I mean, there's all these concepts are pretty well tested in Drupal 7 with panels, but the way that these things are implemented for Drupal 8, are a little bit different. And with the whole Spark initiative, there has been lots of innovation also going on. Some things have made it into core, and some things have not. I don't see a, or how do you feel about layouts being removed? Is it like a loss?
Well, yes, because right now I'm trying to use it. It's not usable because it was removed 3 or 4 months ago, and right now it's outdated. It doesn't use new sales standards, it doesn't use new classes. It's completely broken, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
I was hoping that we will have this layout builder, at least a simple one, not the whole panel stuff, but at least layouts would be awesome. But
yeah, well, I agree at some point, but then maybe the maintainers just decided they didn't want to maintain this kind of code. The display suite is already available for Drupal 8, so you can definitely check that out. I mean, it only allows you to apply layouts for the content itself, but if you enrich your content and make it as big as possible as the whole site is, then, and lots of companies do that. So yeah, check out display suite or help fix the layouts model if you really need it.
Problem when I output some using Finalizer and this use empty. Finalizer still show empty row in the page. How is the problem?
So how do you make sure that an empty view is not rendered when used in panels or panelizer? I'm not sure. But we can definitely have a look tomorrow during the sprints. Maybe we can fix it on your side. Okay.
also, I'm not sure, maybe you don't know, but for me it was a bit dirty to have more content on Drupal 7. The whole page is rendered via one of the custom block content. And when you try to use panels everywhere, as you're using on your site, as far as I understand from the picture, it requires removing block. And then Drupal 8 block doesn't block have such troubles in Drupal 8, so it's completely separate plugin system and that's connected to page render.
I'm not sure if I understand. So you mean the block will always get rendered, or?
Well, now in Drupal 7, the whole page by default is rendered via block content. There's internal machine block content, and using the block system where we don't want. For example, if we're not using panels everywhere, every pure panel using block to render itself, and it's annoying sometimes because we run unnecessary hooks and other stuff. And when it's not enough clear for me how blocks plug in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't answer the question here.
That's why on my yesterday session I suggested to just separate whole page to just header, footer, and a big piece of content that have context and create a logic of all regions inside panel instead creating logic based on block system.
In Drupal 7 we can use panels everywhere. We can use panels and it grids as happiness and
Yeah.
fancy stuff.
So you're talking about Drupal 8 and being worried about the blocks
Yeah, right now in
being
Drupal 7
too performance heavy.
must have model. It's the second model of the system. Drupal can't work without block. I don't like this model at all, because as we mentioned, admin block, admin structure block page is awful. Block management system is awful.
Yeah, it would be cool if we sit together tomorrow and figure out at least some strategies how we can proceed on that. Okay, thanks.